Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In episode 256, we take you inside the NFL Combine with a little different type of vibe. We hear from some players who actually participated in it. Now, I brought back a couple of interviews from a show last year before we had the video format going out. We'll hear from two former Detroit Lions players and what they went through with their experience at the NFL Combine, including things fans never get to see. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Jameer Gibbs, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Folks, we want to let you know that our show is brought to you by our friends at Roaster Jack Coffee Company out of Traverse City, Michigan. Since 1999, they've been roasting premium beans from small farms around the world. Fresh to order, just for you. And the only thing better than great coffee is great coffee with a discount. So go to roasterjack.com, use the code LIONS, you get 20% off your next order. Now, we've spoken before on this show on how the player interviews are so important during the NFL Combine, maybe even more important than those workouts themselves. Well, now let's hear how some of those player interviews went from a player's perspective. Joining me first is former Detroit Lions running back Theo Riddick. Theo was drafted in the 6th round of the 2013 draft out of Notre Dame. He played 6 seasons for the Lions. Here's part of that interview where Theo shares his NFL Combine experience. Thanks for taking the time to join the show today, Theo.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt.
Coming out of Notre Dame, you were invited to the Combine, and that was back in 2013. Do you remember, did you have any expectations going in?
No, to be honest with you. Outside of a performance standpoint, no, because there was not much I felt like, you can kind of prepare for outside of the original testing that you go through on a day-to-day basis that you already experienced. I don't think there was anything that can get you ready, prepared for it, especially when you're in that mix of things. Now looking back at it, it's basically like a elongated summer camp. I like to put it right it looks a lot better for outside looking in, right? As if like, oh, all we do is just run and bench. But yet, man, you're legit busy from 6 o'clock in the morning until maybe 11, 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And then you got to do it again.
All right. Well, did you do any special prep work ahead of time for that or not really?
Not really, not for the mental aspect of it. It was just more so cliche. Hey, be yourself. Don't think too hard about, questions. Obviously feel confident in yourself. You wouldn't be there if you weren't good enough, XYZ. So I don't think it was a lot more prep on the mental. It was all more physical. It was all like, hey, you need to bench and run and shuttle as fast as you can. So it was more around that premise. I don't think the mental aspect was really spoken upon or brought up much at all.
All right. Well, did you have any former teammates out of Notre Dame or whatnot that had gone through the process the year before that gave you any insights?
No, that was that was the downside of things. I think at that time you're so focused on yourself that like you don't even think about reaching out, right? Like I think honestly it was self-inflicting. But it wasn't like anything was blaringly there to sit here and want to support the emerging players that were already like going there versus the players that have already been. So to answer your question, no. But I think looking back at it, it was more probably just being so caught up in the mix and so focused on, your dream being so close. At the end of the day, you were just like, hey, I'm going to kick this door down and whatever meets me on the other end, I confront.
All right. Well, and you said there wasn't a whole lot of prep to do mentally. It sounds like physically you were preparing for it. Once you got there, what was the combine experience like from the inside?
It was intense because, like I said, not to be redundant, but you are legit busy from the moment you step in. Um, for an example, if I can remember this vividly enough, I mean, the day you go in, you get all these badges, you get all this gear, they make it look pretty. And then after that, I mean, if you have any injuries or anything like that, I mean, you're in the doctor's office for about 3, 4 hours, getting new X-rays, MRIs, along with other players. Then from there, you got to go find time to stretch, work out for an hour and a half, then go back to meeting with teams and other position coaches. And I mean, it's people going all over the place 1,000 miles per hour, and you're sleep deprived. um so it was tough. It was tough, man. It's like what I compare it to from an analogy standpoint is like what you see in movies when star players go to college, and you're like, oh, you got all the ladies, you don't have to go to class, and then you get to college, and then you understand like why that's a movie, right? Why it's so fictional. It's like, no, brother, you got to do this and that plus some more. So yeah, like I said, it looked prettier on the outside versus being inside, man. It was tough.
All right. Well, it seems like at the combine, they measure just about everything that you can do. And first off, that's also great hearing that experience again, how again, movies are movies, not real life. And those who, go through it understand the difference. And it's nice for people who don't to kind of hear that. But out of all the things they do measure, is there anything that you accomplished at the combine that you remember that like you were kind of proud of or stood out to you?
After the combine, um, no, not necessarily. I would say more so, if anything, being just completely confident within. I think coming from the combine, it shook a lot for me personally. I know when you go in there and you talk to the coaches, they try to get you flustered, and I felt like I kind of didn't represent myself well enough. I mean, you would come in and I'm thinking we're just going to talk straight football, and you're getting questions like, all right, when was Notre Dame founded? When the what in what direction does the sun set? Like what's the gravitational pull from North Pole to something else? It's like, so to me, it just like shook me. Like I was beyond baffled because I was under the impression it was just going to be things around the football season, things around there, and it was just like uncommon questions, and you hear it from other players, right? Just I mean, the form and how it happens in terms of the questions that are asked are different, but they're all very similar in that same category. Um, so I wish I would have kind of just stuck to my guns and just been like, I could have perfectly just said I don't know. But to the the insecurity in myself, I knew there was just an answer, and I just wanted to be right and wanted to answer correctly because I'm kind of like OCD in that aspect. So it bothered me a little bit. So I think after um, just learning not to get flustered. I think that's the biggest thing. There's so many different things out there that can distract you, take you off track, and always remind yourself, like things that you need to do when you do feel triggered.
That makes a lot of sense. And it leads me right into what I was going to ask you next is about those interviews, those one-on-one interviews. That's a lot of great insight there with, the questions out of left field, I guess, if we're using that baseball analogy. Did you meet with every team while you were there or just most teams or how
I
did
met
that
with
work?
most. I met with most about I want to say like 22 teams. And again, and just the structure and when those meetings would occur, it was tough for you to like represent yourself or be the best version of yourself. You have long days. Some teams want to take you like right in the evening, like late evenings, but then at night you still got a lot of things that you're obligated to do. So while you're doing all those type of things, then you got to go get training depending on the hour in which they want to see you. Sometimes you got to go see that team first and then push your training back. So again, it goes back to um, wanting to represent yourself the best, but it was hard to because you're sleep deprived. And then you're getting asked all these random questions from all these teams. I mean, I honestly can vividly remember at least 6 teams that did not ask me one football question, not one. You know, it was
Wow.
other things about family history, this and that, and things that didn't really concern you. So it just makes your mind wonder. I mean, you're an emerging adult at 21 years old. Like you're trying to do everything right. You gotten this close. You're at 90%, right? So you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's to the max. So I did feel like a lot of players felt that pressure. I mean, I had a roommate, Rex Burkhead, same class, great dude from Nebraska. Had the luxury to play with his fellow teammate Amir Abdullah, one of my good friends, great dude as well. All corn Huskers, but great dudes. And we kind of had the same concerns. You can legit have a break, and then within 10 minutes, you got to be at a room and ready to present yourself the best way you know how. And it was just tough. It was a lot of unknown questions, unknown in terms of your itinerary, when you're gonna have free time, because you want to map out your day. And it was just so hard to, man. It was hard.
So with all that going on and all those questions, catching you by surprise, did that leave you walking away without a feeling of knowing how you did answering those questions? A
Yeah,
little,
yeah, of course. I mean that's rhetorical. I was more, like um, you don't want to disappoint. It all goes back to just trying to do everything you can. You've gotten this close, right? Like you don't want to not make a team or not get drafted or get disliked all because you didn't answer a question correctly, right? Because it's
yeah.
hard to get to know a person in a 10-15 minute span, right? So again, if 7 minutes of that 15 you're flustered, you looking back at it in hindsight, I don't think anyone would be, you would be highly like welcomed on anyone's board, right? So yeah, so it was difficult to swallow, but again, going back to being confident within, um, I just know I tried my best.
Yeah. Well, and that's what you kind of have to walk away with because you brought up a lot of different elements, a 21-year-old emerging adult. I mean, first time through this and you're at that spot, like you said, you've gotten through 90%. You finished a career at a very prestigious university playing great football. You want to just make that next step and you want to get drafted. And so, is there any, you've already shared a lot of insights, but is there any, like, what would you say was your biggest surprise from the combine or your biggest takeaway?
Um, I gotta say my biggest surprise is them harping on, I want to say size and certain numbers for certain guys. Um, the shock was they showed it, right? Like the coaches, the scouts, they showed their disappointment. So you knew like who was high on people's boards at certain times, right? Because you get to watch everyone bench, you get to watch everyone run their 40 shuttles. So you're kind of like overlooking as you're in line, you're over there peeking at everyone else and how they're performing. And then you got the scouts following certain players and XYZ. So I think that's what probably surprised me most. And again, I think it prolonged and I want to say my first year or two in the league as well. Um, just being shocked that coaches actually showing you their disappointment and telling you that they're disappointed. In college, they kind of cuddle you a little bit, coddle you a little bit, right? It's more so, hey
Yeah.
man, we didn't do well. Let's try to do better next time. You know what I mean? It's some type of inspirational kind of talk, right? You don't get that in the league. You don't get that in like the pre-draft. Like they want to test every ounce of your brain capacity, every ounce, especially poise. Um, so yeah, so it was intriguing to see it, alarming to watch, because again, it was something new to me.
Yeah, it's that transition from school to the workplace.
From boys to men, man. That's exactly what it is. So, just more taking more accountability, more onus on things. And I think that just comes with age, comes with exposure to other vets, and luckily I was able to inherit all that and implement that into, my characteristics on how I went about things.
All right. Well, is there anything about the combine that I haven't asked you that you think's worth knowing about for the listeners?
Um, that we don't get much time to like explore or any downtime, right? Like I think a lot of people don't obviously come to Indy much. You know, being at the combine, you get a decent amount of like downtime at times, randomly, sparingly. Um, but in doing so, you don't. It's things can happen so quickly that you don't even have time to decompress. Like go for a walk down the street, just So those type of things I think was really tough. Um, the only thing I can tell you, man, it was very similar to like a summer college camp. Like where you're busy 24/7, you can't even talk to your mother, your father, your girlfriend, anyone. Like you send one text, you're gonna respond in 6 hours. Right? That's so so to me, I want to say that as much as you think that like we're soaking all this stuff in, only the guys that aren't performing are.
Okay. This is meaning the scouts, the coaches, everybody
Yeah,
that's
or like the
observing
players
you.
that decide that, hey, I'm good enough where I don't have to perform. Like, then you can go eat it up because you're not exerting all that extra energy to go train at 1 o'clock in the morning, all the way until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Then you got to get back up at 6, do it all over again. Like, it
Were
gets
there a
to the
number of,
point.
oh, go ahead.
So I hate to say it, but it almost gets to the point where you're like, man, I hope a team doesn't call me tonight. Right? People don't want to say that, but I'm sure they thought that because some engagements in terms of player to team or player to team franchise was greater than others. I would see some guys. I had close friends that, man, they weren't going to sleep till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
They were been in meetings for 2 hours, 2 3 hours. So it's just a lot, man. It's not as pretty as it seems. Um, but I'm glad it has the spotlight that it has and gives these kids the platform for them to showcase their talents.
Now, when you were there, because you said some people didn't have as many engagements and stuff, were there many people that opted out of some stuff and only participated in limited things like they do today?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That was still very common. And obviously, I don't think it would be abnormal because you're supposed to protect your stock. So if you already, prove that you're XYZ on a field, what's there's nothing much you can do from a probability standpoint to hire it, right? So yeah, so I thought it was pretty normal. But again, the beauty of it is to go see other athletes that you have known about for quite some time and see how fluid they are in their movements or their drills and watch them go. And that was very motivating.
So yeah, that's cool. I didn't even think about that aspect, which is you get to see all these other athletes who are looking to go to the next level, just like you. Some you've competed against on the field, some your team didn't match up against, so you only watch them from television. And now you get to see them and talk to them, some of them in person.
Yeah, for sure. And again, now I think that was probably the best aspect of uh the combine. Seeing kids that you watched in high school, because as you go up the charts, you start to pay attention to guys that are in front of you or in back of you that's making some noise. So you're always conscientious of a lot of guys, and in doing so, we're rivals and all that at that time. Um, you find favorites. You find guys that like you see their film and you just love their movements. So you kind of softly keep track of them. Hey, how's this guy doing? Or you see them on a major D1 team, and you're over. You're viewing them and making sure that like they're still keeping up their end of the bargain in terms of how good they are, and you're kind of competing with them from afar. Like we're competitors, so um, you got a little urge in you that you want to do better than them and the things that they're doing really well at. So it's fun to kind of, we call it chop it up, converse with other guys, talk to them, get insight about their journey because everyone's journey is different, man. Their background, and get to pick their brains about a few things. So it's a beauty in that aspect for sure.
That's cool. And then again, you're gonna come across some of those guys years down the road playing in the league with them and or against them. You've already mentioned a couple. Um, so Once the combine ends and you're done, you still had your pro day at Notre Dame that took place after that, correct?
Correct.
And so, what was that like, and how valuable was that for you?
Oh, it was fun. Getting to go back home, be around people you're familiar with, get to do it there one last time. I loved it. And our class that year, we had at least like 11 guys for pro day. So it felt like we were just out there going 7-on-7. It was like, again, just a comfort zone that it's hard to kind of mimic or duplicate. So it was fun, man, like exciting, static. Um, but again, you just felt it at home. I hate to just be redundant and keep repeating myself, but again, it was just like, hey, one last time, like let's try to do our best for each other. Because if you get drafted and you do well, that puts more eyes over here, so that helps everyone.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks for all those insights about the NFL Combine experience and even talking about your pro day there, Theo.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man.
Again, a big thank you to Theo Riddick for all those excellent insights. We'd also like to remind you that our sponsor is Roaster Jack Coffee Company. Be a hero, brew great coffee, and go Lions. Up next is former Detroit Lions quarterback Mike McMahon. Mike was a fifth-round pick in the 2001 draft out of Rutgers. He played 4 seasons for the Lions. And I want to let you know, Mike and I were both recording this from alternate locations, so there were a couple small technical hiccups with the interview, but we made it through pretty well. Here's that interview. Joining me today is former Detroit Lions quarterback Mike McMahon. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, Mike, the NFL Combine's coming up, so let's get right to it. Coming out of Rutgers, you were invited to the Combine. That was back in 2001. What were your expectations going in?
I've heard a lot of different things, and your agents try to prepare you for things. You're kind of pulled every which way. It was a little overwhelming. You got a lot of like personality type tests and stuff like that. And coming out of Rutgers, obviously I wanted to try to perform well, but it's just a different atmosphere, and it's part of becoming a pro, and you got to learn how to deal with it.
I did, you mentioned your agent was giving you information or whatnot, or maybe advice. Did you do any special work ahead of time to prepare for it?
As far as the throwing, no. I mean, I would work out with my teammates and my just my teammates and some receivers that had the same agency. We did. Uh, we My agent was based out of New York City, so they got with some guys based out of North Jersey. I was out of Rutgers, so I was able to go train with some guys and do some, you know, um, technique specific work for the 40 and all those runnings and practicing that. But as far as actual training for the actual combine, I didn't. Now, it hasn't changed in years, and you should be going as a quarterback. You should know every single throw. You should have gone through it at least 3-4 times a week going into that and be ready to go. So, but I really didn't quite know what to expect.
Once you got there, you experienced it. What was the experience like?
It was a little wild. I had you go in and you probably will have. I think some teams pair up and use a service where I don't know if they still do this, but you'll take these psychological tests like, hey, do you like dogs or do you like cats or do you like neither? And then it's all these different questions that supposedly lead to something. And some teams will use the same one, and but you're probably going to take that test, and there's probably like 250 to 300 questions on it, so it becomes a little monotonous, and some teams have their own, and it gets to the point where you're just like, I'm just filling this out, and you don't realize how important that could be. Now, again, I'm not a psychology major, so I don't know how much stock I would put into that. You do sit down, you do have some interviews, but you are the one thing I would tell guys now is every single thing you do, you are going to be judged. Is that fair? No, maybe. I mean, they're going to invest money on you, but at the same time, like if I were to walk in with facial hair, if I were to, wear my shirt a certain way, if I were to, the shirt they gave me was like 4 sizes too big. It looked like almost like a over dressed, and I couldn't throw, so I cut off the sleeves, and then they kind of, bro, he's a guy that wants to try to show off his. And it's not that. I think they overlook into some things, but that's definitely the combine. They will judge you. They're going to spend a lot of money on you, so they're going to try to poke and probe you, and then you're going to go in and you're going to sit down and you're going to meet with all 32 teams, team trainer, the team orthopedic. You're going to go through any injury that you've had. They're going to crank on it, and I was warned about that. And coming out of Rutgers, I had basically blew my shoulder out in my junior year at Rutgers in '99. I had surgery, and when they went in and they repaired it, it was good. They repaired it, and it was completely. My shoulder was going to come out. However, they went a little too tight, and that's one of the reasons why. They went so tight that every single time I threw, the head of my humerus was just grinding down the cartilage. And so there was a little pain, after throwing so much. As I played in the NFL, you had to constantly get deep tissue massage, constantly get stretched, get, PT on it, and take care of your body. But I remember I'd gone through all 31 teams, and it was the very last team doctor. And it was the Dallas Cowboys. And he had me do the drills that everyone else did, and I was good to go. And then he actually had me hold up my arm a different way than anyone else did. It was like across your body, upside down, and he pushed. And I held it for a little bit, and then eventually, like, he got it down. He pushed so hard, and I definitely felt like a little crunching. And he's like, "All right, you're good." But I was like, "Good." I was like, my arm was so sore, and then the next day I had to go throw, and it was tough. It was like definitely cranked on it. Any guy that has a knee injury, they're gonna crank on it. So that's the part where, in my opinion, a lot of times you see guys, hey, they're not going to work out. They're not going to do this at the combine. They're going to go and meet with the teams. They'll meet with the doctors. Well, yeah, and it's smart that they do that, but it's also smart that they're not working out, because you are getting grinded on, and they're going to check every little injury. And I wasn't injured. It just kind of gave it a little. Basically, what it figured out was when they pushed it down, they kind of broke up some scar tissue, and then just gave me some soreness in there, which made my shoulder feel a little weak. And it was a little sore for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, but then I was back to normal. So, but there is that aspect of it, which I would definitely warn players on.
Okay. Well, a couple of things to touch on there. One is you talked about how they measure everything, and they're looking at everything. Out of those measurables, is there something that you did that you were one or two things that you were most proud of when you left the combine?
I was happy with my 40 time. Uh, I was 4.51 or 4.52 electronic. Some teams had me at 4.48. The Cleveland Browns asked me if I ever played receiver or would be willing to, and I was like, I I'll play wherever you guys want me to. I don't know. I don't know if that's my position. I was happy with my 40 time. I was happy with my vertical. Um, I was happy with all my times. Um, I would say that was what came, and at the time, I came out the same year as Michael Vick, but he didn't run. So essentially, I was the fastest quarterback at the combine at that time, because he didn't run. Now he went and ran, I think, 4.3 at his pro day. So I clearly was not the fastest, and I knew that coming in. But
Right.
to be able to walk out of there, and from all the guys that did everything, I was happy with myself with that.
Yeah, and again, we've talked about it before on how the game has evolved so much. Like Jalen Hurts, 40 time is a 4.59. Just putting that in perspective for people who aren't always thinking these numbers. You had some legit speed and some athleticism there, and you said those techniques you did ahead of time helped you show that off. Now, in addition to that, you go ahead and add something to that.
No, I mean, no, I
Uh,
mean, I think with a lot of the quarterbacks, a lot of times they look I think as far as the quarterbacks, maybe now they're probably looking more at the 40 time. Back then, the game was a little different. So I think they were looking more at short shuttle. I had a good short shuttle time. It was a 4.12. It was the fastest short shuttle of the quarterbacks. Um, I had a decent 3 cone time. It was as all the measurables of the quarterbacks as far as those tests. I was the top of the list, and that was something to be good. But at the same time, uh, if I had to go back and do it all over again, I think the interview process, how you dress, like if you wear like a necklace or anything, a bracelet, anything. I mean, they're constantly judging that, and they're drawing these assumptions. The one thing that I thought was really funny was coming out of Rutgers. Um, the summer going into my senior year, myself and a couple teammates, we dyed our hair blonde. As I've to this day, I've never smoked weed. I've never done a drug in my life. I'm not even a big drinker. At Rutgers, I think I drank twice a year tops. I think a total of 8 times. I didn't even drink on my 21st birthday. When I was there, I was fully committed in my mind that I was going to do whatever it takes to get to the NFL. But because I had like a blonde hair and I wore like a beaded necklace, they're like, oh, he's a party guy, and that was the assumption, and I couldn't. When I walked in, all these questions, and I'm like, no, I don't really drink. I don't do this, and so I couldn't understand that. And then as as you go through that process, you reflect back on it, and even then I was a little young and I just didn't understand. And then as you play through the NFL, and then you start seeing things, and you're like, okay, now I see this. Now that could have been easily conveyed by an agent or someone managing. You've been like, listen, hey, this is what we want you to wear: a collared shirt, we want you to wear khaki pants, or this and that, whatever they want, because I felt that there was a lot of unfair judgments that were made about me, and I laugh because even you go into the scouting reports and you read certain things that guys said stuff about, and you're like, they are couldn't be further from the truth, but that's just the way it is. And so um, I would be very aware of how I dressed, and if I were to go back, like if I had to do it all over again. They'll ask you about family, they'll ask you about your girlfriend, do you have a picture, and then they'll judge you based off that. It's kind of, if you've watched the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt,
yeah.
and in the one scouting, he's like, oh, he's got an ugly girlfriend. Ugly girl, that means he's got no confidence. They literally will look at all this stuff. Oh, he's got an attractive girlfriend. Oh, she dresses like this. And it's immediately assumptions about your character when they really don't know. I've never been arrested in my life. I'm very proud of, I don't have a record. I've never done a drug and that stuff. And I was a little shocked by the party atmosphere. I think they thought they were like, oh, he's kind of like Dennis Rodman, because Rodman had his hair blonde at one point. And, I was, I don't know.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. The one-on-one interviews. I think that almost has become the more important thing for teams these days than some of the other aspects, because they joke around. Well, it doesn't matter what a guy can do when he's just wearing shorts and a t-shirt. So at the combine, while those measurables are nice, uh, talk about those one-on-one interviews. You already talked about how they ask you lots of things that you weren't expecting. What were some of the things that you were asked about that you maybe understood where they were coming from, and it helped you understand what they were looking for?
Well, some teams would ask you about the verbiage, like, "Hey, repeat this play back to me," and can you listen to it and retain it and do it? And I believe at the time it was David Shaw from, he was with Stanford for a while, but he was with the Raiders as the QB coach at the time. And it was like, I think it was myself and it might have been Marcus Tuiasosopo. It was another quarterback, and he's like, repeat this play. And it was like typical West Coast, like red left switch, Z ray, sprint right G, U corner, half back fly. Can you repeat that? And I was able to spit. The one guy he got it off a little bit. I was able to spit it out, but he was like, you're a West Coast guy. You ran the West Coast offense at Rutgers. So I did help me on that. And as far as getting on the board with some of those West Coast plays, that definitely helped. But just, make no mistake, it's not a one-on-one interview. It's a one-on 20, 30 interview. They're all sitting around. One or two guys are asking questions, but you've got, like 60 eyes on you, just like this staring. And I would even say, like, if I had any question I answered, I probably would have looked at the guy that asked the question and just answered him, as opposed to scanning the room. Because sometimes when you scan the room, you catch one guy with like one of these looks, and it kind of jolts you, and you're like, oh, did I say something wrong? And you do. So it is a little intimidating when you walk into one of those rooms.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, did you do anything to prepare for the interviews, or back then it was just kind of you showed up and you went to them?
Back then, I think it was more show up and went to. Your agent will try to tell you about it, but I don't remember anything that when I walked in, I just felt a little overwhelmed a little bit. I was like, oh wow, and yeah, it can leave you walking out of there like, did I do okay? Did I not? Did I, like this and that? And you're trying to read. They're looking at you. They're trying to pick apart you. They're trying to read you. They're trying to get, because they're going to invest money in you. So but at the same time, like you're trying to read them. And I would say, going back, just be confident in your answers. Be humble with your answers, and just try to show how much you love football, how much you love the game, and how much you want to play. Because you don't get caught up in the trick questions where they can get you talking a little bit about yourself, or, hey, what happened this time? Did you, this and that, and try to get your side of it, because they'll bait you into that stuff and they want to see, and you're better off just saying, hey, whatever, like it was a learning experience, this and that. You're better off doing one of those things. I mean, when they do the height weight, you're walking in just shorts and that's it. Your shirt, you're standing in front of it. It's almost like underwear. And I will say, just be prepared when you measure in for your height, because when you get in, they have like a V on the ground, really wide, with tape, and they say put your feet on that tape. So you're standing very duck foot. And I got caught off guard. I had no clue it was coming. And because I remember like Drew Brees and Vic, they kind of like stretched it up and got to that 6 foot. And heck, all my life I've been 6'3" or 6'3.5", minimum 6'3". And I got on there, and they kind of give you a little push down, and they measure me, and they're like 6'2", 6'2". And I was like 6'2.5". I'm like, I'm taller than that, and I was like, you didn't let me stand up yet, but nope, move on to the next. And you're basically there in your underwear and move along. So in front of a whole room. So yeah, it's a little intimidating. I will say that.
All right. Well, yeah. Anything I haven't asked you about that you think is important for the listeners to know about the combine coming up here?
No, I mean, it's just, I think a lot has changed since back when I was there. Now they allow fans in. Now it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more going on. It's definitely interesting to see, but there's a lot of the stuff that the fans don't get to see that's going on behind the scenes down in the convention center and in the meeting rooms. And from a player standpoint, be true to yourself, but at the same time, just watch yourself. Don't fall for the bait questions. Don't do it. Do not do it. Don't fall for it.
Mike, this has been so interesting. I love the insights from your personal experience at the combine. I can't wait to hear more about the draft experience when we get closer to that because, man, there's so much more to your drafting experience than I had any idea about. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about the combine and everything.
Oh, for sure. No problem.
Folks, those are two great insights from former Detroit Lions players about their experience at the NFL Combine. Thank you again, both to Theo and Mike, for their time and all of their insights. With so much news coming out of the NFL Combine this week, though, expect another episode early next week. Plus, we got free agency coming up right around the corner, and we'll be weighing in on that as well. Thank you to our friends at Roaster Jack Coffee Company, roasting incredible beans since '99. Visit roasterjack.com, use the code LIONS, get you 20% off your order. Also, thank you folks for tuning in till the end. Please tell your friends and family about this show. Find us on social media like Twitter and Instagram, all major streaming platforms, including YouTube for the video version. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews. Remember, you can find more content and episodes at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friend.